Okay, I will call this meeting to order at 6:37 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Lofgren.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ott.
Here.
Trustee Counterman.
Here.
Trustee Doherty.
Here.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Here.
Trustee Morris.
Here.
Trustee Strock.
Present.
Thank you.
Everyone is present, and I will have a motion for approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda with the following modifications, moving action items A and B just after discussion item 7A.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The agenda is approved with the modifications noted. Next up is audience business. I didn't see any names on the list in the back. Is there anyone wishing to speak tonight that isn't on the agenda for something else? Okay, no audience business. We will move into the consent agenda. For the benefit of our audience, the items on tonight's consent agenda are the payment approval report in the amount of $1,565,917.03 and the February 5th, 2019 minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Trustee Strock. Okay. Trustee Ott. Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Morris.
Aye.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Counterman.
Abstain.
From both the minutes and the payables,
One item,
the minutes.
payment approval.
Okay.
So motion carries 601 on each. Okay, next up is the discussion items. The first item is our financial update from Mr. Green.
Everybody. So the first thing I'll start with is, at the last meeting, Mr. Ott had a question as far as the allocation of benefits and para and all that compared to the budget. I've looked into that, and what it looks to be is like one of the line items was switched between unemployment and the health insurance on the budget upload only. And then wages were higher as well, which would drive those higher. So if you had those two swapped back, it'd be right at about 150%, which is about the same as what the wages would come in at. Yeah, and as I go through and finish doing year-end stuff, I've already started doing that. That is one of the things I look at, is to make sure everything's in line as far as where the budget was. But we do upload the budget items into that, so it looks like on that upload is kind of where the discrepancy occurred, so. I'm sorry, what's that?
Explainable, that's all I care about.
Yes. Move on to the January 2019 stuff. There's really nothing of any significance to notice right now. I mean, we're a month into the year. I guess with accounting, you don't want anything significant coming up, especially this early. So everything looks to be, the general fund looks to be at about 8% of revenues and about 2% of budget. We know that's just because we've got some backloaded expenditures on that. The water fund's about 2% of budget on expenditures, and then the sewer fund is about 1%. So there just hasn't been a lot of activity and really nothing of note that I would need to bring up to you guys. But if you had questions, I'd certainly address anything that you might have.
Questions or comments from anyone? For your update.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, next up is action item A, the public hearing concerning the application for oil and gas abandonment. Should I open the public hearing to start, Maureen, or should we hear from the? we will do that first, so. Yeah, so Crestone would like to do their presentation.
Everybody, since we do not have technology available, hopefully there are colored printouts of slides in front of you, so please bear with me. It'll be a little weird since I won't be, kind of pointing things out with my wand, but I'll still kind of address everything. My name is Megan Campbell, and I'm a regulatory analyst with Crestone Peak Resources. As mentioned, today I will be presenting 2 special use permit agreements for existing wells of Crestone for plugging and abandonment. These 2 well sites are our SAM 1325 and our Lock Buoy 2131. As you can see on the agenda slide, I will be talking about the plugging and abandonment of wells. The next 3 items, the overview map, cultural setbacks, proposed access route, I will be discussing per each well site, and then we will go over some mitigation measures, planned outreach, and then of course conclude with questions and comments. So, if a well's production rates have declined to a level where it's no longer profitable to operate the well, most times operators will plug and abandon this well. Additionally, it can also be sometimes part of an agreement we have with a surface use owner when planning to drill new wells, especially horizontal ones, for example, in the case of our SAM 1325 well, which I will get into a little bit more. Basically, plugging and abandoning is the cementing of a well, the removal of its associated production facilities, the removal or abandonment in place of its flow line, and the remediation and reclamation of the well site. For these 2 specific well sites that we're addressing today, the flow lines will be abandoned and removed. In regards to the sales line, Crestone does not own the sale line. It's owned by another company, but we will encourage that other company to abandon and remove their sales lines. Basically, what is left behind is a steel plate and a dry hole marker, which is welded on top to indicate where the well once was, and then the surface reclamation takes place. Our plugging and abandonment phase, not including the reclamation, should take at most 7 days, but is probably more of like a 3 to 5 day process. We just put in an extra day to make sure in case there's weather concerns, kind of like today, or things like that. On the next kind of square slide, you'll actually see where the SAM 1325 well site is located. So I'll be talking about this well first. There is a circle around the location on the map. Sorry, that's a little small. This well is basically located just north of County Road 4 and actually just a little bit east of our SAM well pad. And this well pad was approved with you guys and drilled last year, and we actually are completing right now. And it's actually also a little bit south of that other Lock Buoy land pad that was approved in October, which will be drilled and completed this year as well. We wanted to let you know that there's no building units within 1,000 feet of this location. There's 3 building units to the west of Bailey Drive, or I think it's also 33 1/4 County Road, and those building units are at around 2,300 feet. There's another building unit kind of to the lower west, and that one is around 2,260. And then additionally, there's a building unit kind of over to the southeast, south of County Road 4, and that one is at around 1,800 feet. If you look at the next slide, we have a proposed access road. Our access for all the truck traffic will be coming off of Highway 52 and headed south on County Road 37. We'll then go east on County Road 4 up to the lease road to the well site. This route actually helps us to avoid the bridges at both Spear Canal Road and Bulls Canal Road because we know those roads have some weight restrictions. Additionally, I wanted to briefly discuss a little bit, and this unfortunately isn't in my slide, I just got wind that it might be nice to have some information on this in our presentation today, our proposed plugging. This information actually should be in the packets that you received ahead of time, but I'm just going to go through it a little bit. Please bear with me, and also if you have any questions at the end, please feel free to reach out, and I may actually also defer some of the more specific technical questions to an operations engineer I have with me. So basically, we are going to be setting a few bridge plugs. We will have one bridge plug for the SAM 13 at 8140 with 2 sacks of cement. We will have another bridge plug at 7,400 feet with 2 sacks of cement. We will additionally have some other cement plugs at about 2,500 with 75 sacks of cement, and then between 1,200 and 1,480 with 100 sacks of cement. And then again, we will have another bridge plug at 800 with 2 sacks of cement. And then finally, a bridge plug sent at 300 feet with 30 sacks of cement to the surface.
Point of information, can you clarify exactly what is a sack of cement? Is that the 80-pound thing at Home Depot or something else?
This is Janelle Reese. She is one of our operations engineers. I will let her address that question.
So we use G-Neat cement throughout our plugging operations, so it's an API standard cement. So it's definitely not Home Depot, that much I promise you.
I guess I wanted to clarify if you could quantify what is a sack of cement and how much, just briefly.
I'm a little embarrassed at this exact moment because I can't quote the regulations.
A barrel of oil is 55 gallons, or, you know, what specifically is a sack of cement?
That's, unfortunately, like I said, I'm a little embarrassed right now because I don't have that definition off the
Enough to
top of my
plug it.
head. Yes, that much for sure.
Yeah,
But
like
I-
saying,
I
I'm
can
not sure of the
probably look it
exact
up.
weight. Yeah, I might have her look it up while I continue with the presentation, and then we'll hopefully have that answer for you shortly. Okay. Unless my colleague has, oh, we might have the answer. Then.
Is it a ratio?
Okay.
We're double checking, make sure it's accurate too.
So it's, 1 sack refers to the amount of cement that occupies a bulk volume of 1 cubic foot. So that's actually a little easier than I thought.
Thank you for that technical detail.
Okay, and if you guys don't mind going on to the next few slides, we will now address the Loch Buoy 2131 site. As you can see, again, marked with the circle, the Loch Buoy 2131 is located actually also near County Road 4. It's to the south of County Road 4. And it's also basically a little bit southeast of the well site we were just discussing. This one actually might look like it's right on the edge of town limits, and it is. The well is actually in Weld County. We did some additional disturbance to allow a surface rig to come onto location, and some of it went onto a road, and a little bit of a fence was taken down out near on that eastern side of that well pad. And so because we are within town limits partially and partially not, we are going through the permitting process with the town right now. Additionally, with this site, as with the previous site, there are no building units within 1,000 feet. We have basically to that west up there, there is a building unit around 1,700. If you kind of look slightly southwest, there are 2 building units that are around 1,900 feet. And then finally, in that southwestern corner, the closest building unit is about 1,600 feet. And then following that, we have a proposed access truck route for this well pad also. The trucks will be taking I-76 frontage road out to County Road 4 and then going west to the well site. And again, here in this situation, we are avoiding crossing the bridge that goes over the Bowes Canal Road. And then I will briefly go over some plugging info for this Loch Buoy 2131 well also. So we will have a bridge plug set at 8,100 feet with 2 sacks of cement. Additionally, there will be another bridge plug set at 7,875 with 2 sacks of cement. A third one set at 7,025 with 2 sacks of cement. And then we will have a balance plug between 2,800 and 3,000 with 100 sacks of cement. Another balance plug at 1170 or between 1175 going to 1350 with 60 sacks of cement. And then a third one between 525 and 625 with 30 sacks of cement. And then finally, we will have another bridge plug set at 275 with 30 sacks of cement going to the surface. Hold on. Yes. That you need to put in? How many sacks of cement we need to put down the well? Sure, and I will defer again to my operations engineer for that answer, so she can get a little more technical.
This one I can do.
Here.
So in general, we find the depths that we want to cover, and then it's basically a math calculation using volumes to decide how much cement. Oh, I'm sorry. What we do first is we decide what depth interval we want to cover, and then from there it's basically a math calculation, determining the volume of cement and then converting that into sacks of cement.
As we've mentioned in some of our previous presentations, Crestone strives to be a prudent operator, drilling safely, responsibly, and efficiently while acting as good stewards for the land, air, and water. We continue this practice throughout our operations. And I'm going to talk about some of the potential mitigations or BMPs that will be in place. There's another slide. It might look a little weird because there's just some brief bullets and it won't have all the information and some pictures, so I might actually try to explain those pictures throughout this too, since I won't be moving them along and flashing them in the presentation. In regards to noise, we are actually going to have no work at night unless there's an emergency. So what you guys may have experienced early, I believe it was early 2018, no night work. Also, that was a different rig. We're now going to have what's normally used for plug and abandonments, a service rig coming in to do the work. So unless there's really an emergency, they're not going to be doing work in the middle of the night or anything like that. If there is a complaint, which we're hoping not, since most of the building units are pretty much all over 1,000 feet away, temporary sound barriers could be put up if needed, and this is actually also one of our conditions of approval that we've discussed with Matt for our approvals tonight as well. Again, with no work at night, there shouldn't be any excessive lighting necessary. If there is any lighting, especially like in an emergency case situation, we would definitely take the precautions to direct them as much as we could, depending on the situation, downward and inwards so they wouldn't be shining directed towards any major roads or houses. We adhere to the COGCC Rule 805C regarding fugitive dust, and some of the mitigations we would put in place is speed restriction and regular road maintenance during those max 7 days we would be out on the site. There's no noxious, prolonged, or unusually high amounts of odor that are to be expected during the plugging and abandonment process, but we would adhere to COGCC regulations if anything came up. With trough traffic, it's going to be pretty minimal compared to normal oil and gas operations. We will be keeping to the proposed routes that were shown on the slides previously, and will mitigate any dust as mentioned. And just to let you know, on average per day, it's about 6 pickup trucks and 6 to 8 tandem trucks. So that truck picture on there is kind of like on average, close to the largest size truck that may be out there. After any and all equipment is removed from the location and the plugging and abandonment is complete, Crestone reclaims the lands by removing road base, ripping and dicing topsoil, applying soil amendment, and seeding with dry land grass mixtures. Seeding is weather dependent and will most likely take place in the months to come, i.e. spring and summer. So it shouldn't be too far out where we'll start that process. And then you can kind of only see one picture now, unfortunately, on here overlapping, but that's just kind of starting to show our process of monitoring regrowth and things like that. And then specifically to the Lock Buoy 2131, that town road and fence will be repaired and replaced. And if you guys want to go to the current and planned outreach slide. So prior to us moving that service rig on location, Crestone will reach out to residents within a half mile of each of these 2 locations before we commence that work. And basically what's on this slide is an example of some of the text we kind of usually use when we're doing our notifications, whether that's by email, text, voicemail. We usually describe our estimated start date, the site, and the proposed activity. And then there's a little bit of details about what exactly will be going on. So as a reminder, any concerns that come up during our work, we hope that people contact Crestone at our community relations phone number, our community relations email, which I will actually read off shortly, or the local government designee, which is Steve Stamey, to let us know of any concerns so that we can address those quickly. So our community relations phone number is 720-410-8537, and the community relations email is communityrelations@creststonepr.com. And then I would just like to thank you guys again for your time on listening to us present our special use permits for the proposed plugging and abandonments of our SAM 1325 well site and our Loch Buoy 2131 site. Again, thank you also for working with us with the technical difficulties, and I can now open it up to questions or comments unless you wanted to have Steve or Matt come up first and then open it.
Save comments, but does anyone have any questions? Sure, highlighter, man.
Put out the bruise.
Trustee Morris?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and explanation. You pretty much knocked off every question that I had so far, except for a couple.
Okay.
Not quite as ticky-tack as how many, what's the volume of a sack of cement, but
Sure.
under the flow line abandonment part of the SPU, in the literature, it talks about flushing, cutting off risers, and then abandoning, I think at the request of the property owner.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit more specific information about that? What and where are those flow lines? What depth are they? The length? I don't quite understand.
Okay, yeah, that is a really good question. So most of the time, our flow lines are the lines that we own and operate, and they go specifically from our wellheads underground to our production facilities. These specific flow lines, I'm not exactly sure how deep they are. I don't know if any of my colleagues have specific knowledge as to the 5 feet. And so they will basically be going down in the process that you mentioned. So, and actually I do have a slight update. So our SAM 1325, in your application notes, it will say that we would abandon and remove those flow lines. We've actually discussed it with Matt Sura previously and kind of worked with the landowners, and so we're actually, the Loch Buoy 2131, those flow lines will also be abandoned and removed as well. So yes, there will still be some of the same processes, but the flow lines will actually come out versus anything being left underground. So, I don't know if I answered all of your
I
questions.
think, yes, thank you.
But if you have
So
more.
they're not gonna be abandoned in place, they will be removed.
Correct, the flow lines will. And then I did mention the sales line is
lines.
slightly different, so we, can encourage the other owner of those. We can have you guys encourage them as well to remove that sales line, but unfortunately, we don't have control over that.
Okay,
But we will remove our lines.
and will the flow lines be abandoned in this process, or did you say they'd be abandoned?
Oh, yeah, so they'll actually be abandoned in this process. Basically, what they'll do is, and I don't know, I guess I can't say necessarily like the steps of which it happens, but yeah, so all of this will be done, all the equipment's removed, the well will be filled with all those different plugs, the flow lines will be abandoned and removed, and then once all of that disturbance work is done would be when we'd actually start our reclamation process.
Okay, and final question from me, under the reclamation portion, in the event of any spill or environmental impact, it mentions reportable quantities before agencies are notified. Do you know off the top of the hand, or does the technical experts know?
What that
How
amount?
much is a reportable quantity?
Oh, yeah, he can answer that.
Hi there, I'm David Stewart with Creststone. A reportable quantity is 1 barrel, but we report everything at Creststone down to the teaspoon drop, so it's all cleaned up, no matter what. And just to kind of address your overarching concern with soil contamination or groundwater contamination, we do actually take soil samples and confirm that there is no residual contamination left during the process.
And then also just to delve a little bit into that, I think I put it in the final documents, but we will also be submitting copies of everything that we file on record with the COGCC to the town as well. So obviously you guys already have copies of the plug-in abandonment notice, but the subsequent report that gets filed, our flow line removals, any spill report if for some reason that happened, as well as reclamation data will all have copies that I will be sending to Steve. So if you need them, then I would reach out to him or look on the COGCC website.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
But trustee,
How deep below ground level do you cut off the wellhead and plug it? 6 feet.
Typically 6 feet, but in the case of this one surface owner, we have an agreement to do it to 15 feet.
Are these wells, ones you just drilled, or is this a different well?
Oh, they're near some wells we just drilled. So the SAM
Not the same thing,
1325 is, yeah, not too far from our new horizontal wells. And this is an older vertical well. So, and that's actually also the one that I kind of briefly mentioned. So in our surface use agreement with the landowners, which is actually Altamira, they're doing all that future development. In their surface use agreement, there's a clause that kind of we negotiated with them that if future wells are to be drilled, we would look at and consider and evaluate plugging and abandoning some of the other existing vertical wells. And basically our goal is to do that before these wells come on and start producing, or the SAM wells come on and start producing as part of our agreement with that landowner. You're welcome.
Only question I had is when you say only during the day, what is day?
Daylight hours, I know, and it's starting to get lighter later. Yeah, daylight
Okay.
to dusk.
Perfect. Anyone else? Okay, we will hear from our staff now. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good evening. Matt Sura, Special Counsel on Oil and Gas Matters. This is good news. One of the greatest things about the kind of large oil and gas development that we're seeing is that they're cleaning up the field. We're seeing certainly large oil and gas development in the area, but in so doing, they are taking away some of those older wells that, and ultimately, we're gonna see less impact on the surface because of all the wells that are being plugged and abandoned. I think I heard from Dave that how many have you plugged and abandoned this past year? Like over 200 wells that Crestone Peak Resources themselves have plugged and abandoned. So this is a good thing, and certainly benefiting both Altamira as well as Tagawa. The conditions that we were concerned with are more or less the nuisance issues that we dealt with the last time that they plugged and abandoned the SAM well, the lighting and noise issues. And so they've already addressed this as to how it's going to be a different issue. Certainly they're going to be farther away from homes, and that's always helpful. They are limiting themselves to daylight hours, which we just discussed. The drilling rig is going to be a drilling rig that's more compatible actually with plugging and abandonment. The last time they had a scheduling conflict and they had to use one of their bigger rigs, which frankly is taller, leading to more light pollution as well as noisier. And we're gonna have a smaller rig in this case. They're limiting themselves to 65 decibels, which is about what I'm speaking at now without a microphone. And they have agreed that if there are any concerns, they're gonna address those immediately. And the town has the ability to immediately request, and they will put up a sound wall, not only for that one, but for subsequent drilling, plugging and abandonment. Where they've gone above and beyond Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission rules is they have agreed to removing all flow lines. And that's a benefit to the property owner. I think it's also a health and safety issue. They've also agreed to your point, what if there is a spill? Well, Town of Lockwood doesn't have a lot of staff to be out there watching and monitoring this, so they've agreed to work with us to request the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission inspect this facility as it's being plugged and abandoned. And I think that's going to give us the assurance that if anything is spilled, or if there's any long-term contamination that happened from a broken pipeline, for instance, that will be found and that will be remediated. So I think that this is a good thing for the town of Lockwood, and this is a step in the right direction in our negotiations and work with partners of Crestone Peak Resources.
Question, how soon would they notice a spill occurred?
They typically will notice it right away. And again, they can talk, more specifics, but what I've seen in dealing with landowners who have spills on their property, is some of these long-term spills, if they are moving, say, a tank battery, they might see some stained soil in that case, and right away, they have to get and remediate that, and that typically involves them removing that soil and having to replace that soil. And as was mentioned, they're also going to be doing soil monitoring to make sure that all those hydrocarbons are removed. Also, that's one of the reasons I like to see these flow lines removed, because these old flow lines, can sometimes leak. And if they're leaking even just a little bit over a number of years, that can be some serious contamination. We want to get that removed and, that soil cleaned up as soon as possible.
So who monitors to see when the spill occurs? I mean, how do they monitor that to know that the spill has occurred?
Well, there are a number of ways. There are over 60 Colorado and Gas Conservation Commission inspectors. They have to self-report if there's any spills over a barrel of produced water or oil, any of that. And as I mentioned, having somebody from the Colorado and Gas Conservation Commission out there during this plugging and abandonment of both these wells, I think is going to be helpful as well.
You're answering my question. What I was asking was, how soon would they notice a spill?
Oh, when you say notice, do you mean notice to you, to the city? I mean, as soon as they see the spill, it's going to be obvious because it is stained soil.
Who sees it?
Any one of the people working on the plugging and abandonment operations. They're also doing reclamation, soil reclamation, and they want to have clean soil to be able to make sure that that grass seed or whatever it is that they're putting on the ground is going to grow.
Trustee Strack?
Thank you. First of all, I notice here that they're going to put up a sound wall after there's been a complaint. That kind of seems like it's putting the cart before the horse to me on that. We're going to wait for the noise, and then we'll put up the sound fence. I also would like to know how or why I should believe that they're going to go to some length to reduce the light pollution. They've been a pretty good neighbor as far as the two SAM pads are, but now I notice that they have two pumping operations where they're pumping water out of the Spear Canal. Both operations run all night long. Sometimes you can see the fumes from the heaters, or maybe it's just the heat itself running through there. I live probably over half a mile away, and their lights from these two little projects shine through my house every night. It would simply take one small panel to cut that light out. And for me, I don't really believe that they've gone to any effort to address the light pollution. And so I guess I'm looking for some kind of assurance that I'm not going to be looking at a giant light out in the backfield for the next 2 months.
I think it's a great point. And so I think the most important assurance that I can give you is that they're going to be doing this during daylight hours. And the need for light, in the middle of the night, I think is going to be all but eliminated, I would hope. And that's what we've been discussing. As I said, that there's also going to be a much smaller rig that's not going to create as much noise. It's going to be farther away from folks. And to your point about the sound wall, it's exactly what my position was, frankly. And in discussing it with them, the assurances that they gave me about the smaller rig, the daylight hours, we're not going to see a reoccurrence of what happened last time for those reasons alone. And also, the truth of the matter is you're talking about 4 additional days of having people out there working if you're going to have a sound wall. And these sound walls, because we have such wind in this part of the state, and particularly this time of the year, you have to have piers, metal piers that are driven into the ground at quite a depth to be able to fasten those sound walls to. And that is also creates noise and disturbance. And so to limit the disturbance, in this case, I think that makes sense not to have a sound wall until it's necessary.
I also think it's quite an expense to put up that sound wall that they're not taking on. I would like some assurance, though, once again, about the light pollution. You know, it seems to me that pumping water out of the Spear Canal is just as important as any operation that's going within, inside of their sound wall. And for them to obviously overlook that for weeks and weeks without even just driving by and noticing themselves leaves me to wonder. So, thank you very much.
Trustee Strzok, I think that that is something that you should bring up with the applicant, because that's out of my experience.
Thank you.
Any other questions right now? Okay, so I will go to the public hearing portion of this. At 7:13, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public interested in speaking on this tonight? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing portion at 7:14, and I will turn to any additional questions or at this time comments from the board on either of the pending applications to plug. Any comments from anyone? Any questions from anyone? Okay, then I will entertain a motion.
I move we approve resolution number 2019-5, a resolution of the town of Lockbowie, Colorado, granting a special use permit for the plugging and abandonment of the Lockbowie 21-31 well located in NENW Section 31, Township 1 North, Range 65 West, 6th PM, parcel ID 1473312010005, within the corporate limits of the town of Lockbowie.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on resolution 2019-5. Roll call, please.
Trustee Strzok.
No.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Morris.
Yes.
Trustee Counterman. Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Trustee Ott. Thank you.
Carries 6-1. I will entertain a motion on the second resolution.
I move we approve resolution 2019-6, a resolution of the town of Lockbowie, Colorado, granting a special use permit for the plugging and abandonment of the SAM 13-25 well located in Section 25, Township 1 North, Range 66 West, 6th PM, approximately 2,463 feet northeast of the intersection of Weld County Road 4 and Bailey Drive / County Road 33 3/4, within the corporate limits of the town of Lockbowie.
Motion and a second on resolution 2019-6. Roll call, please.
Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Strzok.
No.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Ott.
Aye.
Trustee Morris.
Affirmative.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Trustee Counterman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-1. So thank you to Crestone for coming, and thank you to Mr. Sura for giving a presentation. You guys are free to go if you don't feel like hanging out. And we will return to our discussion items. Give them a second to clear out here. Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution 29-7, approving First
wait.
Amendment.
Wait.
We're going back to discussion items.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sidewalk discussion is next. So, Mr. Beback, the floor is yours.
Several weeks ago, board asked to provide some input about how sidewalk maintenance is managed by the Public Works, by the town. So I put a couple quick sheets for information, just so we can, so the board can have more information about it, and in order to discuss it with all this sufficient information. So the first page is, essentially what I did was just show our streets repair and maintenance budget. You know, for 2019, it's $400,000, and moving down, you'll see what that money is being utilized for. Sort of going down through asphalt, slurry, crack seal, patching, chip sealing, get down to concrete repairs, and our target number there that we're using and we've been using for several years is $40,000 for concrete repairs. And last year, 2018, we spent about $9,000 of that $40,000 in the remaining for curb and gutter. And with that number in mind, I just plugged in 5% construction appreciation or increases over 5 years. So you'll see maybe the anticipated expenditures related to sidewalks through 2027. Next page shows you the lay of the land, essentially town limits, all the subdivisions, and who maintains what. The black boxes are Silver Peaks to the west and Blue Lakes to the north. Those, through two separate agreements, those two subdivisions maintain the sidewalks themselves. Those are managed and by the HOAs. Any issues related to sidewalk, cracking, infrastructure issues there, they maintain it and they correct it. The rest of the red squares show you the areas that we maintain, and that's what the $9,000 figure came from, is sidewalk repairs that happen in Farms, Berkshire, High Plains, Lockwood, and Old Town. That's all I have.
Questions for Mr. Bivak about the information he presented? I had a question. When you say the HOAs maintain it, does that mean they take on, like the HOA itself takes on the obligation, or do you know if they're passing it on to their homeowners if there's a problem?
Good question. From what I understand, they manage it internally. I don't know what happens.
Could be either.
Could be either way, yes.
Could that possibly be in their special district fee?
Possibly, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, comments on the policy in general. I think the discussion is whether we think the town should be continuing to take on the obligation of repairing and maintaining the sidewalks, or whether we should adopt a policy where if there needs to be a sidewalk repair or replacement, that the individual homeowner is responsible for that. Does anyone have comments on that?
I think in light of the information that some areas of town are, the sidewalks are maintained and repaired by HOAs, and then others, they're not. I think it would put an unfair burden on the homeowners to have to repair or replace their sidewalk in certain areas where geographically, if they're living in another spot, they wouldn't have to. I am opposed to putting this burden on the homeowners. I think in the town areas, it should be town responsibility.
What do you count as the town area?
Everything within the town limits. The town areas that are not subject to the PUD agreements, I guess. Not specifically, not the Silver Peaks and then the Blue Lakes, since those sidewalks are already maintained by another entity.
Anyone else? Oh, go ahead.
I pretty agree with Trustee Morris on that. I feel that that as the town accepts these subdivisions, we go out there and we look at the curb and gutter and the sidewalks, and we accept that responsibility at that time. If you want to go out and put a sign, a legal sign in your front yard, it needs to be behind the water meter. So as I understand it, everything in front of the water meter actually belongs, or the right-of-way belongs to the city. With that being said, I feel that the sidewalks are the town's responsibility. The town accepted responsibility for those sidewalks when they were dedicated to us. I don't believe you can ask a homeowner to be liable for the compaction or the way that the sidewalks were put in. I definitely believe that the curb and gutter is the town, but I don't believe the burden of the sidewalks should be put upon the citizens. Thank you.
Trustee Morris?
If I might respond to Trustee Strock's comment about property line and where people's responsibility lies. In the section 11-2-10 of our municipal code, it states, let's see, the responsibility for property line to the main traveled portion of the adjacent public street. So I don't know, is that the sidewalk or to the street portion? I would think that is up to sidewalk.
I'm looking to the town attorney for.
When you read that provision as a whole, it talks about responsibility being limited to include, but not necessarily be limited to removal of snow and ice from any sidewalk, but it doesn't really address sidewalk maintenance, as in repair of panels of concrete that have heaved or cracked. So I don't think that that provision in and of itself puts sidewalk maintenance responsibility on abutting property owners, and in fact, that's certainly why in 2011 and then more recently last year, we talked about whether or not we should change that language to, not sure if you had a chance to read that in your packet, but to specifically put in an obligation on abutting or adjoining property owners to maintain the sidewalk in a safe manner, including removing obstructions like concrete heaving. So I don't think, as our current law stands, that obligation is on the abutting property owner.
Thank you for clarifying that. My position's still the same.
Did you have more, Trustee Strack?
No, I still don't believe that the liability of the sidewalk should be passed along to the homeowner.
Anyone else?
Does the homeowners associations have anything to do with that at all?
Well, I think that what Mr. Beback discovered, and when he put together his exhibit, what he realized is that under some maybe subdivision improvement agreements we have, so for instance, I believe it's in Silver Peaks and in Blue Lake, the HOA actually maintains the sidewalks within those two subdivisions, but otherwise it's a town responsibility.
Trustee Doherty?
So I guess kind of on that premise, technically the people in Silver Peaks and Blue Lakes are actually paying HOA fees to do it, and they're also paying taxes to cover everybody else's. So they're technically paying double on that. So by us not wanting to split these apart and putting that onus on the resident, we're actually taxing somebody, or they're getting a double fee for that same service, whereas everybody else in the town is not being done that. I think if there's a way we could push that to Berkshire, I can definitely see in the areas that don't have an HOA, having that continue to be covered by the town, just because I definitely agree that that would put a burden on a lot of people that wouldn't expect that typically. Again, I would go back that I think this is awfully atypical. I think a lot of towns, a lot of municipalities do put this burden on the taxpayers to do this on their own. So I don't think it's all that out of line for us to be considering this. But I do think we should consider the fact that people in two of our major subdivisions are essentially paying twice and are paying taxes to cover somebody else's repairs, which I also think is wrong. So I think we should consider that as well. I'm not saying I know kind of the right solution. Personally, I think if we can try to make an agreement with Berkshire, that would have Berkshire cover it, and that way we can then start saying if you're covered by an HOA, that's part of the HOA agreement, and if you're outside of an HOA, it's covered by the town. But I guess I'm not sure how we can go about that, but that's kind of my thought.
Well, I think that that might be a possibility, but I think you would have to anticipate that your HOA fees are going to go up. So either way, you're paying more. So you're quite right, if I may, Mayor. A lot of big cities, Denver, Colorado Springs, they all require abutting property owners to take care of sidewalk maintenance. But I also know that they have huge enforcement issues with that, because it's not cheap to maintain sidewalk in front. If you've got a heaving concrete pad or piece of sidewalk in front of your house, you know, it's an easy $1,000 fix, and not everybody has that kind of money, and so it does become quite an enforcement problem. I am aware that some of those cities have basically sort of pools of money, and abutting property owners who have that responsibility then can make application for some of that pool of money, so that's a budgeted item that those towns, or those cities do. And then those property owners can make application, and if they rise to the top of that pile, there's some grant money out there to help them meet those responsibilities, so.
Excuse me.
Well, I know there's parts of town that don't even have sidewalks, and we're paying taxes for sidewalk repairs, so I think that kind of offsets Trustee Dougherty's argument about the double standard. I don't see how we can split that up. I think it's, the way that it is now is workable, and it is working, and it's not an extravagant expense to the town. So I would support us continuing the way that we are.
Trustee Jeffrey?
I'm really curious if a sidewalk needed to be replaced in Bella Vista, which is where I live, if the HOA would actually pay for it, or if I would have to pay for it. And I serve on the design review board for my HOA, and I've never seen anything about sidewalks. And I spent some time looking in the documents, and I'm scrolling through again here. I don't see anything discussing sidewalks. So I think it'd be important to get some answers to those questions for these two neighborhoods so that we have all of the information if we're looking at making any changes.
Trustee Doherty?
So I have a couple of other things. I guess, one, I definitely see that it's not a ton of money, but for $9,000, we could do a lot with our, we talked about making new pathways through town and things like that, and that $9,000 isn't really a lot when you look at the whole budget, but there's other things that we could be spending that money on every year with new trails, new upgrades to parks, things like that. And I do want to go back to, and I think Trustee Counterman made a good point. There are people that don't have sidewalks. I'm one of them that doesn't have a sidewalk in front of my house. And so I guess really to make it equal for everyone, maybe we should actually pull the HOAs back into what is in the town scope, and then everybody's taxpayers' money is going to repair sidewalks all over town, and it doesn't really matter if you have a sidewalk in front of your house or not. It's just kind of more of a general, we're all paying taxpayer money to repair sidewalks in the town regardless if it's in front of your house or not. But again, I think people that are in Silver Peaks and Blue Lakes are paying more than everybody else in town, and I think that's unjust.
I think HOA matters belong with the HOAs, and I don't know if we should be getting too far out of our lane about what the HOAs are gonna do or should do or might want to do. As far as the meat and potatoes of what's before us is, do we want to amend this and put the burden of sidewalk maintenance on the homeowners? And I don't know what the consensus is, but staying strictly on that topic, I'm comfortable with what we have now and leaving that as is.
Trustee Counterman?
Just wondering if we need to do more research with the homeowners associations and find out whether or not they actually do cover this before we decide on which way we want to go.
I think we have the answer to that. Mr. Biak's research is saying Bella Vista and Silver Peaks have taken it on. I think the only question that remains is the one Trustee Jeffrey raised, which is the HOA the entity agreeing to pay for it, or are they imposing a burden on their individual homeowners? My guess would be they would impose an assessment, because I can't imagine any HOA is agreeing to pay for all of this itself. Which leads me to kind of my response to Trustee Morris's comment, which is I do think finding out that answer is in our lane, because that suggests that if you live in Bella Vista and Silver Peaks, you might end up with a $1,000 assessment at some point that no one else in a non-HOA part of town gets, which I think is an important thing to know. Any other comments? Before we direct anyone to do any more research or anything like that, is there any will at all to change this policy right now? We generally don't take comments from the audience during discussion, sorry. but I'm seeing a lot of head shakes no. So I think honestly, we can just drop it at this point. There's no sense in sending out staff to do more research for something we have no will to change the policy on, so. Yep, so we will move on. No action is necessary from staff at this point. Next up is the newsletter discussion, and I'm listed on this, and I can't honestly remember what the. Oh, yes, yeah, that's right. So consistent with our conversations with the library, they did forward some information to Clerk Blackston for inclusion in the next newsletter. And she was curious if that is something we are interested in having them put in there, and if so, whether we need to do some kind of policy with it. We've talked about this before in terms of not allowing private actors to include things in our newsletter. The library is technically another government entity, so they would kind of be in their own little ball game there. Is there anyone on the board that has comments on that or concerns about letting the library put things in, or the town attorney, if there's any comment you have to make on it?
Well, this issue is not dissimilar to your issue about website linking that we talked about a couple of meetings ago. And I would think that, for instance, if the library came forward under the new policy that you adopted and asked for a link to be placed on the website, that they would qualify, because we, as I recall, under that policy, do allow other governmental entities that operate within the town to be able to ask for and receive a link to their information. And so I do think that this newsletter inclusion issue comes up just about every year at some point or another, and we just kind of ad hoc deal with it. And it may be that it makes some sense to adopt a policy about the newsletter. And because we've already vetted sort of the list of entities that we think it makes sense for us to link on our website, I would say that that's a good start for a policy as far as whose information we're willing to put into the newsletter. So maybe if the board was amenable, I just should draft up a pretty quick policy that mirrors that website linkage policy, essentially.
The PTO isn't school.
Okay, if we allow school to do stuff, we could go to multiple pages of the newsletter. So it's just something to think about, because I know that it's been discussed that we do 2 pages. Because, you know, it does get a little costly for the printing, and I get why we do it, I'm not saying that, but it does become, it could become more costly as the more pages you add. So it's just something to think about when we add all the same people we put on the website. I mean, I get why we would want to do that, but just think of the other parts of cost and staff time, additional staff time for that kind of stuff. So just, I would just ask you to keep that in mind.
Answer questions, Trustee Doherty?
I guess I have kind of 2 parts. One, I definitely agree with kind of the staff time portion of it. I mean, we would be absorbing a lot of cost if we ended up getting a lot of this, and so that's why I guess at face value, I almost think we just keep the town newsletter kind of the way it is. But open up our website, because in my opinion, that's a lot quicker, a lot easier to maintain, a lot cheaper for the town. And it's gonna have pretty widespread access to a lot of people for what, you know, a lot of these other, I guess, organizations are wanting to do. So I think from a printed newsletter, that we limit it to what we have, and if, you know, they want to send us something that they want us to attach as part of what we email out as part of the newsletter, then maybe that's a little different. But I think if we're having to do any formatting, any massaging of the newsletter to get things to fit in, all of those things, I think is not really what we should be spending time on. That's their thing. And if they want to advertise and they want to try to get the word out, that really needs to be on them to do that as much as possible. I think we can definitely assist. The other thing that gives me a little bit of hesitation is I still have quite a few concerns over like the Hudson Library District. I have major concerns, like on one of them that they sent regarding the new playground and amphitheater that is using taxpayer money from Loch Buoy for a playground and amphitheater in another town. That I would imagine has very little use from this town at all, although we're paying for it, and we're probably paying a significant portion of that. So I have issues with that.
That's a separate discussion for another time. Anything else on the newsletter, Trustee At?
I understand and listening to everybody else's comments, but I'm just gonna make an observation. Normally Friday mornings, I spend at the senior center. And a week ago Friday, not last Friday, but a week ago before that, there were 8 people around the table sitting, having coffee and talking. And only 3, but only 2 had computer access. Because the coordinator for the senior center has the computer at the senior center, but she doesn't have one at home. So of the 8 people that was there, only 2 of them actually had home computer access to get on the website and get the newsletter. So I just want to take into account, we have some older senior citizens that don't have a computer and quite frankly, don't want a computer, which is their decision, but we still have to get the message out to them somehow. So I think we should have board discretion on what we put in the newsletter. I don't think a policy needs to be written. I just think, well, if you want to write a policy, that's fine. But if we want to add something in the newsletter, I think the board should have the discussion to do that. If it's beyond.
Every item we receive?
No, if it's beyond the guidelines of the, whatever she writes up.
Yeah. I mean, and well, I have a comment on that too, and I'm sure both Clerk Blackston and Town Attorney are gonna say the same thing. Anytime it starts to get board discretion on what speech to put in the newsletter, it instantly freezes me up, because that's a First Amendment issue.
Mostly just because we get them at random, and picking and choosing, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but who you put in and who you don't, and having discretion for you to have a policy in place, I really think it would help staff, and then I also think it helps our constituents and anybody that might have commercial. I mean, I had a real estate person send me an email that said they just moved here and would like to put their stuff in the newsletter. I mean, it's not for advertising, and I don't think we should ever go there. That's my opinion. So I think I think it's better to have a policy and limit, because it will help staff and the people in our community know what's going in and what's not going in. And if our newsletter is not the place for everything they're looking for, then they will learn to look other places for it. And I don't mean that. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, if there's information, they know what's going in, and it's always the same, and it's only town business, which I think is a plus. And then if there's other stuff from other entities, they can call those places, those places send out flyers. I'm just not sure the town should be the one being the advertisers for other entities. I'm okay with, because similar to the website, if it's a governmental, I mean, I get the library, because are people paying for tax dollars, so that's why it's this sort of for that, but if it's other entities, I just think we should really make sure it's still something.
Trustee Counterman?
That was my argument when we were talking about the rec center and paying $5,000 to them to advertise. The same point, that they were gonna that we were gonna partner with them. If I'm incorrect, correct me, but we were gonna partner with them to advertise, for them to do some advertising on their events and such on.
To advertise town events.
Yeah. Whatever, they're a private entity, the same.
Brighton government entity, and the idea was we were gonna partner with them, and it would be a town event.
Be what?
It would be a town event. It's a totally separate conversation.
All right.
Anyone else? Trustee Strauss, sorry.
I think it kind of, at a certain point, becomes a question of, are we the sponsors? Are we sponsoring these events? Are they sponsoring anything for us? I don't know that Hudson Library is putting anything out that sponsors a Lock Buoy event, but here we are spending our time and money trying to sponsor their events. I think our money could be used differently than that. I, of all people, have a complete different list of who should be on the newsletter. And so we know we don't really want to go there. I think we should either open it up for everybody or keep it at a minimum as we have now. So, that's my point.
Anyone else? Okay, so, yeah. You do the newsletter, so yeah.
So I just have a couple of concerns that I've encountered that you might want to consider while you're talking about this issue. If we do allow the library to have a spot in the newsletter, and I think once we open the door to that, that's going to be an ongoing, okay, thumbs up for them, and that'd be great. Last year, however, I was not allowed to put in that the Hudson Fire Department was having a pancake breakfast. I see absolutely no difference in that than the Hudson Library, and I think the fire department might question that, you know, if that's the case, and the library's in and the fire department is out. However, next month is going to be the Water Resource Central flyer. That's not something we're paying taxes into. I know we're in a partnership with that.
The town thing.
It is a town thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so, you know, there's so many different little layers to what people will accept, but it seems like there should be some sort of guideline, you know, whether or not we're going to accept it. And some things, I think it could be a lot more interesting. The bottom line is the newsletter could be a lot more interesting than it is, but there's no, I don't have any guidelines. I always ask, does anybody have anything to go in the newsletter? I don't think we have a large readership, honestly. So if we could do something to jazz it up, or something that would make it more meaningful, or something that people would actually enjoy reading, I think that would be a huge benefit if we're going to continue to mail it.
So, Trustee Doherty?
So I guess that kind of goes to, I guess my overarching point with this is there's a lot of organizations that do a lot of good things for this town. There's the fire district, there's the school district. Well, now we're gonna start building houses in Adams County, so there's another school district and another fire district as well. And so now all of a sudden, you know, at some point in time, a lot of these are gonna have overlapping events, and we're gonna be spending a ton of time just trying to get all of this stuff for other organizations into our newsletter. And that's why I think it needs to be strictly to town-sponsored events. So the $5,000 that we spent with Brighton Rec Center, that is now a Town of Lochbuie event that they are hosting, but the Town of Lochbuie is paying for that, and we are putting that on as the Town of Lochbuie, not as, you know, the fire district in the Town of Lochbuie, but the Town of Lochbuie. And that's the distinction that I think we need to make. And it's not that these other organizations don't do great things. That list just gets way too long, way too fast, and we spend way too much time trying to parse through and figure out what we're gonna add to the newsletter and what we're not. So that's why I kind of draw the line. If it's something that we've sponsored and it's a town event, then we put it in the newsletter. And I also and I get what you're saying about making it a little bit more interesting, but I don't go to the newsletter as a good read. I go to get the information that I want. And so sometimes I won't read it because I know when trash day is this month, and so I don't really think there's gonna be a lot in there for me, but that's okay. That should be a source of information for people, not something that people pull up as you know, something they read every Sunday morning. If you see what I'm saying, I don't think that's the intent of our newsletter. I think the intent of our newsletter is to disperse information from the town to the citizens and not be in particular a great read.
Anyway. Well, I want to try and get consensus here, because I think the consensus is we're not changing it. So is that kind of the feeling I'm getting from everyone? Keep it as is?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so I think that's where we are.
So I'm not putting the library in.
Not putting the library in. I think we're sticking only to town information and town-sponsored events.
And if they would put it on their link of their website, and I looked because I thought I could add it as a link to the website, but they don't even have it on their website, so
Well,
I'm just gonna try to do that.
Well, and
But it didn't work.
the only reason this came up is I think they gave it to us because we said, you're not putting your information anywhere, and they said, well, we'll give it to you, and we said, we'll put it in the newsletter, and now we're saying no. So they might be a little grumpy at you, just fair warning. But, so I think we're keeping the policy the same as what we've decided. Ms. Duran, Personnel and Municipal Court.
Personnel matters other than your chief executive. So Steve, your town administrator, answers to you. The only other person that really does answer to you would be the municipal judge, because under state law, the municipal judge can only be removed if there's good cause to remove him. So he's the only employee, frankly, that the town has. It's not a pure at-will employee. He's actually not an employee, he's under contract, but he still can't be removed as a contractor to the town without meeting the statutory standards for good cause to remove him. But I wanted to bring up just again that issue of personnel, because not that I know of any issues necessarily with the town of Lochbuie, but in my 30 years of practicing municipal law, it comes up a lot where trustees on boards or council members on city councils overstep their role and try to act as administrators and handle personnel matters. So if a member of staff were to come to you to try to complain about somebody that they're working with, it wouldn't be appropriate as policy-making legislative body for you to take any action on that. Rather, that should be discussed with the chief executive, with the town administrator. If the concern is about the chief executive or the town administrator, funnel those conversations to the mayor, and the mayor will funnel that back out to you if you as a board take action about your town administrator. So that's really all I really wanted to say about personnel, but if you have questions about that, please don't hesitate to ask me. Then I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background about the municipal court, because I don't know if some of you have or have not been involved in the municipal court. The municipal court is a creature of statute. It's set up under state law. It only has jurisdiction to hear violations of your local municipal ordinances, and 95% of the time, that's going to be traffic matters. You have a municipal judge that, as I said earlier, answers directly to you. You can only remove him for a good cause. It would be similar to you getting involved in personnel matters. If there is a pending prosecution matter, you will get calls from constituents telling you how unfair the police treated them and or why they shouldn't have that ticket and how they did stop at that stop sign. You will get those calls if you haven't gotten them yet. And it would be inappropriate for you to engage in that matter. We have a third branch of government and a judge whose role is to hear both sides of every story in the form of a trial and make a decision as a result of that. So intervening in those matters would be highly inappropriate. And again, I only warn you that because do recall that we have CIRSA coverage for you as elected officials so that you have no personal liability for actions that you take as long as you stay within what your role of responsibility is, and it's not your role of responsibility to interject yourselves in prosecution matters. So that's really all I wanted to say about the municipal court, unless the chief felt I needed to say something more.
Questions at all on either of those issues?
So technically,
The officers, if they know that you're on the board, it should make no difference. They should write you into the traffic court, and you need to come in here sometimes. If it's really awkward, we ask to write them into county court rather than having to deal with it here if we think that the judge won't be able to act in an impartial manner or something.
The short answer is don't roll in and tell the prosecutor I'm on the town board, so that's how you get in trouble fast.
I was just more curious, because if they technically are an employee and they report directly to the board, then how is that not considered conflict?
Well, I think it all depends on whether or not they even know you're a board member. I mean, so it's a lot more hassle for the police department to write you into county court, especially if you decide to take your matter to trial, right? Now, we're not doing it here in this building, but we got to drive up to county court. So But that's what I would tell them to do if in fact I thought we were in some sort of a impropriety situation.
Yeah. Okay,
Might want to slow down.
yeah, or stop at the stop.
The best thing is to give them a ticket and never show up in court.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
This may not apply, so I'm gonna first ask, I saw that the penalties can be up to $2,650 or a year in jail. Do we have any jailable offenses in Loch Buoy?
Yes, so they are jailable. However, I think we'll talk about this.
Can you do the mic?
I think I know where Trustee Ott's going with this, and that is that there's that require that for jailable offenses that we appoint public defenders, and our judge has adopted a standing order to address those kind of issues. But again, one of the ways that this town can work around that is we can write these matters into county court, because for the most part, those matters that are jailable, there is a statutory corollary, write those matters into county court.
Well, even no insurance tickets can carry a jail penalty, even through municipal court. But yeah, we have to provide a prosecutor, or a public defender if they're going to be potentially jailed. The main issue, and even before that law went into effect, is that we have to pay. The town has to pay for nights in jail. It's like $80 a night now. So say you give them a 10-day jail sentence, that's going to cost us $800. Now we can bill that back to the defendant, but we're probably never going to get paid. So we don't want, he's not going to issue jail sentences to anyone because it costs the town money to do that. So that's generally kind of the way they look at it.
But we are well aware of that issue, and we've taken action through the judge issuing a standing order for dealing with the obligation of the town to issue a PD, a public defender, in certain circumstances. So.
My concern was, having been at the CML Thursday and Friday, basically we were told with the new legislative makeup, that there's a lot of rules that are gonna get passed, that they don't care whether the towns and cities approve of them or not. They're gonna ram them through. And that's one of them, that there's gonna be, you're gonna have to provide a public defender.
Well, I do know that the state has come up with some funding this year to help, because it was an unfunded mandate, frankly. But there is a funding mechanism in place right now to help with this requirement to appoint public defenders.
Well, they had to, because an unfunded mandate's unconstitutional, and the Tabor Foundation will jump in with both feet.
So, but I do know that there's continued push down at the legislature to ramp up those protections. So we shall see.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we'll move to action item C, which is 2019-7. Maureen?
-7 is the resolution approving the First Amendment to the renewed, amended, and restated agreement we have with Waste Management. We had a presentation at the last board meeting with an explanation from Waste Management about the change in fees this year. Essentially, I believe it's a 2.7% CPI adjustment plus an additional 79-cent, what they call recycling extraordinary charge this year, which Waste Management explained to all of you the rationale for at the last board meeting. This resolution just came before you tonight because we are trying to adhere to our discuss one meeting, take action at the next meeting policy.
Any questions or comments? Trustee Ott?
Is this our last year with Waste Management for their contract?
First year.
First year? Oh, I thought this was our last year.
We just renewed it at the end of last year.
Okay. Yuck.
Anyone else? Yeah, Trustee Trapp?
So each resident gets a recyclable barrel for free? Is that how that works?
Well, we pay a blended rate, or you pay a blended rate that includes recycling, so you can't really opt out of recycling. You're going to pay that blended rate regardless. So I guess you can look at it as free in that you got to pay regardless. But this 0.79 cent extra charge that they put on this year was related solely to recycling and market forces that have been impacting their business as a result of new Chinese rules about how clean the recycling materials need to be. That was me paraphrasing what was a half hour.
Or longer, yeah.
Presentation at the last board meeting. That's essentially the rationale. Correct, and that's unchanged. We're not changing that this year.
Anything else? I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 2019-7, a resolution of the town of the, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lockbowie, Colorado, amending the fee for waste collection services and approving a first amendment to the renewed, amended, and restated trash recyclables collection services agreement with Waste Management in Colorado.
Second.
The motion and second, roll call, please.
Trustee Strunk.
Yes.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Counterman.
Yes.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Trustee Ott.
The motion carries 6-1. Next up is the appointment of committee member Sonia Huerta Cruz, who's been sitting patiently in the back. All of us had a chance to meet Ms. Huerta Cruz at our board retreat. We now have our events committee created as of the last meeting, and she is the first person expressed interest in joining. Trustee. Clerk Blackston has an application that she's put together for future members. She's going to give one to Ms. Huerta Cruz to fill out and then have them available for other people who might be interested. So if you know of other people that are interested, please send them to Town Hall and have them ask for an application so that we can get that committee filled out. But for tonight, since we all have heard Ms. Huerta Cruz's background and we know that she's very interested in getting this off the ground and started as soon as possible, I will be looking for a motion to appoint her. I'll let her come forward and tell us a little bit about herself again, just so we have that on the public record. And then we will take action. Do your name and address first.
My name is Sonia Huerta Cruz, and I live at 100 Wenatchee Street.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in the.
A little bit about my background. I've always worked in nonprofit. I have my degree in criminal justice, but I've used that degree to work in criminal justice and human services. I do know how to do a lot of fundraising due to having those positions. I did work for Almost Home and coordinated several events for them and their mixed income housing there at Hughes Station. Classes and events. When I lived out in Byers, I was part of several committees. I was on 2 different volunteer fire departments out there, was part of a street decorating committee out there. I have been a CASA volunteer and won Caseworker of the Year award from Adams County Social Services for my volunteer work with them. I'm familiar with the local resources, and as I had told you when I met y'all, I wouldn't know what to do if somebody just gave me a ton of money and said, here, go do something with it. I'm very used to securing donations and seeking them out. I'm very, very excited. I jumped in because I think that our little town has so much potential, and I think that what I gathered off of the thread that I read on Nextdoor was that people in Lockbowie are wanting a sense of community, and I would really like to be part of making that happen.
For Ms. Huerta Cruz? We've all talked to you once already, so go ahead.
Thanks for doing this, and I wish you all the luck in the world, and maybe with some board guidance, it'd be nice to start thinking about maybe an annual event for us this year.
For the board?
Well, not for the board.
Or for the town? I have so many ideas, like I'm just ready to hit the ground running.
So that would be my personal suggestion, is to start working on that, the biggest volunteer event of the year.
How do you feel about a 4th of July parade?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
4th of July parade?
How do you feel about a 4th of July parade?
I'm open for anything.
Okay, so as far as I know, the fall festival, that it's a lady who does her own thing, correct? It's a lady who
We can chat
Heads
about
that
that
up.
because that might be changing this year.
Okay.
We'll talk about that outside of this.
Okay, and I would also, if I can, Terry, can you please come up here? Another community member, Terry Hoyt, has volunteered to be on the committee.
If you guys can both grab an application right now.
Yeah. So we're ready to go, and she has possibly a third lady that's wanting to join us, and I possibly have a fourth. So that's what I've been working on since I've met with y'all last time.
Board's indulgence, we can let Ms. Hoyt say a word too, and maybe appoint her tonight as well.
Hi, my name is Terry Hoyt. I just moved into Lochbuie, January 2018. I live in the Silver Peaks community. I'm a member of, I'm a delegate on our HOA. I want to know everything and anything I can about our community, make it a better community, get involved. Lived in a community where I was very involved in volunteering, whatever, so that's about it.
Questions or comments from Ms. Hoyt? Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion or motions.
I move to appoint Sonia Huerta Cruz to the Lochbuie Events Committee.
Second.
First motion is a motion to appoint Ms. Huerta Cruz. And I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please. Or actually, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? You are appointed.
I
Terry
do
Hoyt,
have-
right? Terry Hoyt?
Yes.
I move that we appoint Terry Hoyt as an events committee member for the town of Lochbuie.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And you are both appointed. Thank you and welcome.
We're excited. Thank you.
When you do start getting the ball rolling, if you have other people that are interested, send them to town clerk here and she can get them an application and bring them before us to get appointed. If you start coming up with ideas, feel free to reach out to me or to anyone on staff, and we can figure out how the board needs to best address that.
Okay, and the other question, I think I'll probably just have to message you about what scope we are able to work within, what's allowed and what's not allowed.
That's, touch base with me, and I will send you to the appropriate staff person to figure out if that's okay or not okay and all that.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, thank you, everybody. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so next up is, no, you gotta do all this stuff here. Next up is staff reports, Chief McCoy.
Okay, I don't really have anything major to talk about, other than that we did get our police radios finally after a grant that we got approved for about a year and a half ago. Got put on hold for a variety of political reasons. It was from Department of Justice. Finally funded that money, and we just purchased all of our radios. We're getting ready to install the mobile radios in the vehicles, this probably within the next month. So that's real positive news. That's about $36,000 worth of equipment that we got through that grant. Other than that, all of our new folks are off of field training and on the street, and we're fully staffed and rolling along really well right now. Yeah.
Questions or comments for Chief?
Yeah, I was looking at the budget and I was just wondering what Axon Enterprises is.
Axon Enterprises is our body cameras and our tasers that we carry. So we have annual contracts with them for both, for the storage, for all the data storage for the body cameras, and for the licenses for the tasers that we carry.
Well, the amount that I'm looking at in the monthly report is
Annual.
the upkeep of the storage of the information.
Yeah, I think that the one you're seeing there is for the storage of all of the data for the video, for the year. To do that, we have to pay for it once a year.
And my second question is, do we use $3,000 worth of ammunition a month?
That's for the year.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Our budget's $4,000 for the year. You're just seeing that we purchased the ammo for the year. Mhm. No, we wouldn't use that much of it.
Anything else for Chief? Go ahead.
Since we're picking on you, Chief,
Go for it.
you know this report that you give us every month, you know, dozen pages of stuff? You know, personally, I don't look at every one of those.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if it's actually, I mean, if it could be made available to us online, but is it really necessary that the board sees this every month?
Totally up to you all.
It's coming to most of us in PDF, I think, already.
So it's totally up to you guys. I feel like you should have that, that you should be able to look at it if you want to.
Okay.
So I feel like if I'm not giving it to you, then you'd be asking me for that information.
That's probably true. Thank you.
So it's up to you. If you don't want us to, well, I don't know. We don't print it anyway, generally, I don't think. I don't know how many we print, but, okay.
All right.
Trustee Counterman?
Just wondering, with the junk car issue, when you haul away a junk car, who's responsible for paying for that service?
Okay, so if it's an abandoned vehicle on a public roadway, it's different if it's on somebody's private property and we're towing it away. That rarely happens. So if it's abandoned on a street and we tow it away, then there's a specific timeline that it has to sit there. If it's not retrieved by the owner, then the tow company can file for a lien on the vehicle and get the title, and then they sell it. So we don't have any. They can do whatever they want with it. We don't have any. It doesn't cost us anything.
Okay, so you call the tow company, they come and get it, and they do their thing.
They do their thing after either somebody comes and retrieves it, and they have to pay for the tow fees. If they don't retrieve it, then they go through the process, a legal process to get ownership of the vehicle, and then they sell it for parts, keep it, whatever they're going to do. It's up to them what they want to do with it.
Anything else for Chief? Okay, next up is Public Works, Mr. Be back.
Just a quick summary, kept it a one-pager, so a quick read for y'all. Not anything exciting except those two articles that appeared on Brighton Blade, and I'm going to brag about that a little bit, just because it was pretty good for the morale boosting in our department. Just focusing on the folks who do their job day to day. Otherwise, fortunate to have another staff member on board, so we're fully staffed with Nathan coming from Fort Lupton, and Brandon and I attended a quick construction observation training in Parkin, Colorado. It was put on American Public Works Association. That was really good. Working on the GIS, GPS workflows and getting ready to purchase the actual GPS unit. We're just that is going pretty well as well. Other than that, plowed a couple times in January, and it's getting a break from the park maintenance. We're focusing on some of the repairs on our equipment, getting that buttoned up and ready for the season. So, any questions, feel free to ask, but that's all I got.
Comments? Looks like they're moving forward with County Road 2 finally, is that?
We had a construction meeting actually this morning about it. I typed this up last week, so I didn't include this in there, but things are looking well. The asphalt specialty is mobilized, and we've seen the potholing truck, and that's one of their subs. They'll still be doing that next week, as a matter of fact, just to verify some of the locations of our pipes, actually, the water pipes. Other than that, the first phase, they're into the first phase of work, and anticipated finish is July 11th for the road widening. Yep.
Else? Okay, next up is Mr. Amy.
But, oh, we're good. Well, the monthly report, you can see, we got a little bit of growth showing, you know, of wastewater flow as far as what's coming into the plant, about 8,000 gallons a day from this time last year. And we have about the same weather. I do notice that on the effluent, though, we do have quite a bit of groundwater that come in due to the moisture, because we have to measure that as well for our state reporting. Water usage down from last year, about 10,000 gallons a day. Couldn't tell you why, but poo slows up, water's down. That's a good note. I also included what we got for projects this year. As you guys have already know, I'll keep you updated as we go through the CIP projects, as we get them done, and if we've got any stumbling blocks. Construction out at the wastewater plant's going relatively smooth. McDonald Farms was on site, give us some insight on the solids loadout. Looks like we'll probably have to put in a concrete pad to be able to handle the weight of the roll-off unit. Been discussing and planning, we have 4 plant shutdowns that we'll have to do to tie things in through the summer, actually the spring. And, you know, those are always fleshed out through the meetings with Carl and I and Randy on what we can do and can't do, to give guidance to the contractor to say, well, no, we can't do it that way. But things are moving along pretty good. I think they're making up some time. We still got that issue with the MCCs that we got to deal with being delayed, but things are going along pretty good.
Questions or comments for Mr. Amy? Thank you for the update.
All right.
And Mr. Stamey.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one thing to add to Mr. Ramey's comments, that we will be receiving the 60% design plans for the elevated water storage tank here probably this week. One other water-related note is that when Blue Lake was being built, their infrastructure, we requested per our water plan that they install a 16-inch water line that was installed through the extent of their current work. There was in their development agreement a reimbursement requirement for the difference between an 8-inch line and the 16-inch line. That documentation was submitted and reviewed by both Inertia Engineering and David B. Back in Public Works, so we have made that reimbursement agreement payment. We're still working with our development applications, finalizing with our water team several details on Silver Peaks East. We're also finalizing the water resource credit agreement for Lochbuie Center and Station. We've been working on the Dr. Cog submittals with Adams County and Weld County. We did receive a letter from CDOT concurring with our request for that interchange improvement project, with a commitment from CDOT for $150,000 on that project. And this was now working with Region 1 and not Region 4 on this project. So we've presented this application to both the Adams County and Weld County forums. We have a formal submittal of that coming up on February 27. And also with the Weld County Forum, we're going to request, want to request anyway, assistance with a trail project, what we're calling the Lochbuie Greenway Trail. And the program that seems like a lot of people are recommending based on the scale of it is one that it's non-federalized monies, and it's a 50% match requirement. So we're trying to get that application ready for Weld County. Chief Gabrielson and his kind of impact fee team will be attending the March 5th meeting. And I think that's the primary activities, and a lot of development-related questions coming up. And today we had a meeting also with a potential purchaser of the Antonov property and going through the requirements of that, some of the background of that project and implications for that.
Do you want to give an update on the asphalt versus concrete at the roundabout?
I was going to have JVA do that, but so I can give you, we did have a conference call with CDOT, and I think the conclusion of that is that it really doesn't matter if it's asphalt or concrete. CDOT probably isn't going to maintain it anyway. So our team, and really from a technical standpoint, I'm working with our traffic engineer and the civil engineer, and conversations that we've had with other public works departments and engineer departments, that our recommendation is to proceed with the asphalt surface of that with the concrete on the curb edges.
Other comments on anything for Mr. Stamey? Seeing none, thank you for your update. We will move to mayor trustee comments. We'll start with trustee Counterman.
I have no other comments.
Trustee Morris?
Nothing.
Trustee Strack?
I guess the only comment I have is that Steve's been really working very hard on grants for lighting of our interstate and the trail. There's quite a few forms that have to be put out, and many times they're just repetitive and more than likely just a real pain in the ass. So I appreciate what Steve's been really doing. He's been working hard at that for quite a while, so thank you.
Trustee Att?
Several things. I won't take too much time. I'd like us to look into joining the League of Cities. I don't know what that would take to get the information on that, but just get the information out so we understand what the League of Cities does, because with our growth coming, I think that'd be something for us to be interested in joining. As far as my CML duties, I think I've mentioned the Wayfair Act before. The legislature finally gave the Department of Revenue an RFP to look into a single point collection system for sales tax, which would mean that everybody has to, the sales tax is one collection point for the entire state, because the key to the Wayfair decision was you cannot place an undue burden on the seller to collect the sales tax. So right now, Colorado has 359 sales tax collection districts, and the legislature wants to add more for early childhood development and several other things. So they're going out even farther on a limb with this Wayfair deal, making it harder to collect. But at least they have the Department of Revenue look into a single point collection deal. And they're also talking about giving small businesses with less than $100,000 in internet sales an exemption from sales tax reporting, which could potentially cost some money, but they don't think it's going to cost that much. Open meetings, they're agreeable. The last thing they had in open meetings was you had to have post your open meetings on a website, and they discovered that there are several small towns that have like 50, 100, 200 people that don't have a website. So now they're at least working with the municipalities that don't have a website to make the thing work. There's some other things that are going along that we basically got told they're going to pass whether you like it or not. The family leave bill is going to go through. The right to rest bill is going to go through, which limits our government immunity. If we arrest somebody for panhandling, we can be sued. They're trying to figure out a way to make Colorado a sanctuary state and protect us from losing any federal funds. I don't see how they can do that. And they're also trying to divert this. If you look at your registration, there's a special ownership tax which goes to the county for roads and bridges, and strictly in that county for buildings, roads, and bridges. They're trying to divert that to the general fund. And they're also going to try to put a ballot question on the November ballot to divert the lottery funds, which were originally set up for parks, open space, and that kind of stuff, to multiple uses. They're going to try to do that. And they're also going to try to get a ballot measure to get rid of Tabor. So there's many fees and unfunded mandates coming down, which will probably result in a host of lawsuits by the Tabor Foundation. Because some of this stuff that they're trying to foist on us is clearly not funded, and that's unconstitutional. I forget, they quote what section it is, I don't remember it is right now, but it also is in the Tabor Bill of Rights, Taxpayer Bill of Rights, that you can't do that. So I fully believe by the middle to the end of this year, you will see lawsuits coming everywhere from the Tabor Foundation and other groups about all this stuff they're gonna jam down our throats.
Did CML take a position opposed to most of that stuff?
Most of that stuff they're opposed to. But they basically said, we don't care what you want. This is what we're gonna do.
They being the General Assembly?
General Assembly, yeah, with its current makeup. That's all I have.
Trustee Doherty? Trustee Strack?
Trustee Strack?
Trustee Morris? Trustee Counterman?
Yes.
Trustee Strack? Trustee Jeffrey?
I'm looking forward to trying to attend the Hudson Library Board meeting tomorrow evening. That's all I've got.
Okay, and I just had a couple of quick things. First of all, I had Linda make you a copy of the updated board meeting schedule. The only things, quick changes, I added the state of town in there for this year and next year. A potential date for the retreat I added in September. I haven't talked to Steve about that yet even. But I'm hoping that we can do it earlier in the fall this year so that we can have more say in the budget process. I heard from several of you, including Trustee Counterman, that you wanted to do our retreat earlier so that we had more input in how the budget would look when it's first getting proposed. And then I think that's the only other change is the election day meeting for this year got canceled too. That was on the recommendation of Clerk Blackston in case our building is being used as a polling center, which it might be. The other quick things I had, as far as my kind of czar role, I did meet with the HOA boards for Berkshire and Silver Peaks and got a lot of good feedback from them. I have some things I need to share with staff, and I'll do that after the meeting, either in person or by email. I'm hoping to meet with the Bella Vista board, but they haven't scheduled their next meeting yet. Other quick things to note, March 16th is the first Mayor's Mingle. All of you are invited to attend. In fact, I would encourage you to attend. The hope is that we will at least get, 10 or 20 people from the community show up and ask us some questions and want to know what's going on in town. That's at 10 a.m. on Saturday the 16th is the first one. And then we may potentially have a work session on March 26th that hasn't been finalized yet, but please calendar it for 6:30 on March 26th, just in case it gets set. That'll be for water-related issues. Trustee Ott is working with an organization that wants to come and give us a presentation. And I think that's it. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say is I wanted to echo Trustee Strock's thanks to staff for all the hard work you've been doing recently on everything. Things are running really smoothly in town. I wanted to especially thank you for all of the research you did tonight, Mr. Beback, on the sidewalks that ended up being for nil. But it was very important and very helpful to us, and I think arriving at the decision we did. That kind of work is really appreciated, and I know we don't tell you guys that enough, so thank you very much. And with that, I will entertain a motion for the executive session.
I move to go into executive session with the town attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on legal questions under CRS section 24-46-402, parens 4, parens B, water court litigation with ECCV and other issues affecting the town's water rights.
I both.
I also move to go into executive session for the purposes of determining the town's position in matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators under CRS 24-46-402, parens 4, parens E, dedication of Lost Creek water rights for Blue Lake subdivision.
Motion, do I have a second? Motion is second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ott.
Yes.
Trustee Strock.
Yes.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Counterman. Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Trustee Morris.
Yes.
With that, we will go into executive session for those two items. Now, everyone to clear out? I think so. We can just do it in here, I think. Oh, okay, yeah. I thought I recognized them, yeah.
That's Matt Machado, he's a partner of mine.
And then we can bring up the good stuff.
Good.
How are you? Yeah. The Adams County thing when we went to, yeah. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Grant. Nice to meet you.